On 19th of February, we went to the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre in Westminster for a big rally that was organised by Grassroots Out. There were lots of people on the stage. Some of them came as surprise guests, others we knew about in advance. I was lucky enough to get a seat near the front so I could see what was going on. I think there were nearly 2,000 people there, so it was a really very, very big meeting, very impressively organised. The sound system, as you will hear, sort of seemed to come and go in places, actually. So my apologies for the fact that the sound quality isn't always as good as it could be, but you can hear the vast majority of what's going on here. Anyway, the first person onto the stage was David Campbell-Bannerman, who is a Conservative member of the European Parliament, but formerly has actually been chairman of UKIP. So he's, been quite wide-ranging around the political spectrum, but he's an absolutely solid Brexiteer, absolutely firmly believes that Britain should be out of the European Union. So he kicks things off. So it's David Campbell-Bannerman first up.
Political Advisory Committee, David Campbell-Bannerman, MEP.
Hey!
To have no alternative but to pool and share our armed forces. These European defence moves are profoundly dangerous and must be stopped in their tracks. The truth, then, is that the Council has handed yet more powers over to the EU. Powers over the UK economy. When will the people be told the truth? We are heading for an EU superstate, and Britain will have to pay to rescue those in the euro, even though we are not a member of the euro ourselves.
Well, Peter, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm delighted to be here, and it's an amazing turnout tonight, thousands here tonight. Thank you, Peter, Tom and Kate, for your common sense and hard work in setting up GO. It's been a great success so far. It's only been a few weeks, and here we go. Now, I'm David Campbell-Bannerman, MEP, and I believe in taking back control of our country. We have a really brilliant lineup of speakers tonight, and what really matters is this is cross-party. We have Labour represented, excellent Kate Hoey. We've got Conservatives, fellow Conservatives. We've got UKIP. We've got some excellent experts from the trade union movement and from economists and all of that area. So we have an amazing cross-section tonight. And we have a surprise guest that is so surprising, I don't even know who it is. And by the way, if the lights go out, just follow this tie. Now, we've had a pantomime in Brussels, but now we have the real show here in London. This referendum is a huge event in our national history. It is a momentous opportunity, the biggest political challenge of our lifetimes. Britain can recover confidence in itself, leave the shackles of the European Union, and become a self-governing, independent nation once again, free to shape a bright and exciting future outside of the EU, and we will be big globalists, not little Europeans. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are declaring the Declaration of Independence for our country. Now, the inside Remain have nothing positive to say about staying in the EU. But the British people aren't stupid, and they won't buy these scare stories. You know the Norwegian referendum, 1994, which no won by 52% to 48%. You had all the same scaremongering. They said if Norway wasn't in the EU, it would lose jobs. Well, unemployment went down. They said investment would fall. Well, it went up. They said exports would fall. Well, they went up too. The stock market would fall. but it surged immediately after the vote. They said Norway, little Norway, would be all alone, it would be isolated, it wouldn't have a seat at the table. You've heard that one, haven't you? But now Norway is on most global bodies around the world. It has the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, one of the richest and happiest countries on the globe. No wonder a recent poll found 72% of Norwegians are happy with their deal. Now today we are united in one cause, and nothing should come between us and that great cause. Not ego, not ambition, not career, not party advantage, nothing. Because all of us here today put country before party.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, as the chairman said, I was in Brussels this morning and then rushed back here for various media interviews. And there we had the dodgy, first of all we had the dodgy dossier, remember that, on the Iraq War. Now we've got the dodgy deal. And neither is clearly legal. And you and I know that whatever the drama we've seen over the last few weeks, this non-deal is feeble, worthless and irrelevant. There is nothing in this deal on cutting our contributions to the EU by billions. Nothing taking back powers over fishing, farming, trade deals, customs union, energy, environment, transport, tourism, social policy, consumer protection, justice, home affairs, health, culture, tourism, education or training. How about that? Nothing in the deal. They're all powers we've lost in whole or part to the EU, and they're not covered by this deal. The negotiations have been an illusion, a magician's trick. Nothing of substance will change. Nothing is guaranteed. None of it is legally enforceable or deliverable. This piece of paper, this non-deal, is an IOU. It's like a blank cheque, unsigned, undated, unclear, and forever stuck in the post. Now, I'm an MEP, as you know, and I can tell you the European Parliament, that federalist sausage machine for the European Parliament, would just love to overturn this deal after we voted to remain, if that's the case. They resent any special treatment. They see us all as one country already, all of us as EU citizens. That's not what we believe, is it?
No.
So forget this deal, it's irrelevant. The choice in this referendum is between superstate or sovereignty. And the political road to that superstate is paved with opt-outs, excuses and political cowardice.
Yeah.
There is no reformed European Union on offer. And there will be no status quo either. Voting for Remain is a real danger to this country because we'll be signing this country up for 30 years at least. By then, we'll be a sad, overtaxed slave region in a country called Europe.
Yeah.
Now we hear of the risks of leaving all the time, but what of the risk of remaining? We face a common, thank you. We face a common welfare and pension system. You have French and German pensions which have trillions missing and that have to be paid for. If you have to share a pension system, you have to pay for it. What about harmonised higher taxes? They're already doing it in the Eurozone now. What about VAT on food and children's clothes? What about greater economic decline? The Eurozone hasn't been a great success, has it? What about higher energy bills to pay for all those crazy policies? An EU single army to die for. They're really keen on that. Being laid open to millions more migrants from Albania, Bosnia and Turkey joining the EU. A common health system that threatens our NHS. And losing our special role on the UN. with our embassies and our influence withering away. The real choice, then, is whether we want to remain and sign up to a European country, this European superstate, or to leave and be an independent and governing nation again, self-governing nation again, reclaiming our national sovereignty. Now, people challenge us, well, what is your alternative plan, then, outside the EU? Well, in one sentence, it's quite simple. Britain will negotiate a great trade deal with the European Union because we are its largest single customer. I call this WTO Plus. I don't want to get technical, but WTO is guaranteed because that's under World Trade Organization rules. That's the fallback position. But we can do better than that. We can negotiate WTO Plus. And Canada is about to get a WTO Plus deal with 99% of tariffs removed for non-agricultural goods. So we can do it too. And then we can run our country like Canada and Australia and the USA run their countries, restoring democratic control, economic control, and border control. That's one sentence. So to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, the choice really is superstate or sovereignty. And we choose sovereignty. All of us here believe we'll be freer, happier and wealthier outside the European Union. Now let's declare our independence. Thank you.
Next onto the stage was Bill Cash. He's Conservative Member of Parliament for Stone. Like David Campbell-Bannerman, he's a veteran of the Eurosceptic cause. He's done a lot of background research. He's done a lot of work in the House of Commons, a greatly respected Member of Parliament and one of the stalwarts of the Brexit cause.
A relief to be amongst real people. Why am I here? It's been a very long journey. 25 years since that Maastricht Rebellion. And why were we doing it then? For the same reason that you've just seen me speaking about in the House of Commons and as I've tried to do all these years. And I pay tribute to Peter and to David and to all the others and all of you for everything that you've done to try to restore to this country the right to govern itself.
Yeah.
Now you can all relax. I'm not going to talk about constitutional matters. That was just on the bit of paper here. I'm going to talk about what I feel. What I feel about this country. What's happened over the last 40-odd years since we joined the European Union. The fact that since then, as we have gone further and further forward and deeper into this morass of legislation, this increasingly offensive system which we now have to leave. Who in this room wants to leave the European Union? Do you want to leave?
Yay!
And I'll tell you why. Because it's about you. It's about your children. Just think about them. Think about your grandchildren. And think about your grandfathers and your grandmothers. And think about the fact that there were people who fought and died.
Yeah.
To allow ourselves to be put, by virtue of these hopeless negotiations, into a permanent second tier of a two-tier Europe dominated by other countries? No! I said in the House of Commons on the 3rd of February, why has my right honourable friend bypassed the promises and the principles that he set out. Why in the Bloomberg speech did he say that our Westminster democracy was the root of our future in our national parliament? Under the system which is now before us, and if we were to stay in, it will become worse and not better. This red card system you heard about is a load of tosh.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to get people to believe that something is happening. That's where the betrayal takes place. That's why I am so deeply determined during the whole of this campaign to fight and to fight again for your rights, your children's rights, and to stand up for the principles for which those people sacrificed so much in the past.
Yeah.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is about trust. It is about the trust that we have to place in our own selves. We have to fight for our future. It is not going to be a simple cakewalk. We are going to have to fight and fight and fight again against the bureaucrats, against those men in unsmoke-filled rooms. Against the determination of other countries to do us down. This qualified majority voting system, which has accumulated through the treaties to drive us further and further away from our democratic birthright. And furthermore, the European Court of Justice, which adjudicates over our Supreme Court and over our Parliament, your Parliament. So I simply say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a historic moment. This is the moment when we fight back.
Yeah.
So, my last words to you are simply this. We were promised two things in a speech, in a statement made by the Prime Minister on the 23rd of March. He says, now we have the opportunity both to reform and to achieve a fundamental change in our relationship with the European Union. The first is about remaining in, and the reforms are weak and they are unacceptable because they don't achieve the second objective. And where is that second objective? The change in the fundamental relationship of ourselves with the European Union, which can only be achieved if we leave the European Union.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there is no fundamental change. So I promise and pledge to you, with Peter and all the others, that we will fight and fight and fight again for your future, your interests, and our great country.
Then we had Gerard Batten. Now, Gerard Batten is the UKIP member of the European Parliament for London. In the past, he's been trade union official. He's worked in engineering. So he's got a good, solid background. Again, this is a man who's been working very hard against the European Union for a good number of years. And it was interesting to listen to his take on events.
Thank you, Dave, for that very generous introduction. And look at the size of it. It's all go, isn't it? What a crowd. It's absolutely fantastic. And I've got some good news for you. The tie works. On the way here tonight, I popped into the corner shop And a lady said to me, "What a beautiful tie." And I said, "No, it's not, it's hideous." But I'm wearing it for a reason. And she said, "What's that?" And I explained to her what I was doing, where I was going, and what it was all about. And she now knows. And that was the first of just 2 people who commented on the time. So I promised to say hello to Alison in Forest Gate, but she said she's going to watch the news bulletin. So I think you've chosen the colours well. Now, I've actually been quite ill today because I've got flu or something, and if I wasn't on the platform tonight, I'd be tucked up in bed. And I've been drifting in and out of consciousness all day, and wrapped myself up and was watching the daytime television. And you know that there's some old programmes that they show, and some pretty awful programmes, and you know, you can see things like the Incredible Hulk and the $6 Million Man and the Saint. And I think, you know, as I said, I wasn't entirely with it today, but I think I was watching a pilot episode of a new drama programme along the lines of the things I've just described. And it seems to revolve around this. There's a plot in Europe, you know, having failed to unite Europe under Napoleon, the Kaiser, and Hitler, they've decided to have another go. And it's reached quite alarming proportions because they've been a bit cleverer this time and they've actually bought it. And of course they've got quite a long way. They now have their own government in Brussels. They've taken over the banks. They've got their own currency. They now control the borders, or rather don't control the borders. There's no need to invade anywhere else. You just get a ticket on the train or Eurostar. And of course the British government has become a bit alarmed about this, so they sent over Special Agent Dave. Now, this is where the start of a very good concept for a pilot episode has started to go a bit wrong. Because unlike Roger Moore in his heyday, or James Bond, Dave hasn't gone in there and sorted them out. He hasn't, you know, attacked their HQ. He hasn't beaten anybody up. He hasn't done anything dynamic at all. What actually Dave has done is had a series of meetings with the protagonists over there, and he's begged them that Britain won't have to become part of the euro. He's actually asked them, would they please repeal some of the awful unnecessary laws that they've made, the tens of thousands of laws, if he asked them nicely. But there's no commitment on that they actually will. They're just humouring him, obviously. And of course he said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we didn't actually have to pay benefits to people who've never paid any tax into our system and are actually sending the benefits to people who don't live in our country? And they said they'd have a think about it. And then he really put his foot down because he said... He said, we're going to have a red card, which means you cannot do things that we don't like. But, of course, that won't just be us saying that. That'll have to be 15 other European countries who may or may not agree with us, so it may not actually work anyway. So, this is where I say the concept starts to break down, because Dave has to come back now to Britain, and he actually has to try and sell this to the British people. Now, is anybody convinced?
No.
I think that not very few people are going to be convinced. As David Campbell-Bannerman pointed out earlier on, this really is about, do you want to be a region of a United States of Europe, or do you want to be a self-governing, independent, democratic nation? Now, we all know what the answer is, and that is going to be the fundamental question that has to be put to the British people. It won't be about faffing around the edges on things that don't matter, or if they do matter, they're not that important. The central issue is whether we're going to be a democratic nation or not. And this has been done before, of course. We have been through this before. And if I can just say, I've actually got a bit of a sneak communique from 10 Downing Street about what they're going to put out tomorrow. You know, I'm in the know on this. And now let me give you a couple of quotes. This is what the Prime Minister said, or is going to say. We confidently believe that these better terms can give Britain a new deal in Europe, a deal that will help us and our partners in Europe. That is why I'm asking you to vote in favour of remaining. And he said, I believe that our renegotiation objectives have been substantially, though not completely, achieved. Now, if those words sound familiar to you, it's not because very similar words will be said tomorrow or a little while in the future. It's because that's what Harold Wilson said in 1975. Quite different in 1975. Yes, we joined this thing. It didn't control most of our laws. We still had a veto. We lost the veto a long time ago. It now controls most areas of domestic policy. It now makes most of our laws, and nobody has an excuse now not for understanding what this project is about. It's about the creation of a European federal state, the United States of Europe. If you think that's a good idea, and I suspect nobody here does, but if there are members of the public who think that's a good idea, then vote to stay in. But if you don't think that, then you have no choice but to vote to leave. Now, I'll wrap up now because Harold Wilson did say a couple of things in that pamphlet that went out to every household that I agree with. And I'm going to give you a short quote. He said, the British Parliament in Westminster retains the final right to repeal the Act that took us into the market on the 1st of January 1975. True. Thus, our continued membership will depend on the continuing assent of Parliament. Now, Parliament exists only to represent the people who elect it. When the people vote to leave the European Union, it will be the duty of Parliament to implement that decision and to take us out by the quickest and simplest means possible. Thank you.
Now, Gerard was followed by Kate Hoey, Member of Parliament for Vauxhall, Labour Member of Parliament, of course, one of the most articulate Eurosceptics within the Labour Party, and very, very clear about why it is that Labour people should be voting to leave the European Union. Again, a different take on the subject, so let's have a listen to Kate Hoey MP.
What a wonderful, wonderful audience. And it is such a privilege to be here as a Labour MP supporting the Grassroots Out movement. I was so delighted to be working with Peter and Tom when we first thought about this in a little room in one of the House of Commons outbuildings. And we really wanted to do this because we genuinely felt that there wasn't that unity at the grassroots, that the campaigning wasn't being done that needed to be done, that there was too cosy a group of people organising in some of the campaigns, and that we had to take that control back to where the job is going to have to be done, and that is at the grassroots. So that's why I am a total supporter of the grassroots movement, and it's because of that significant cross-party support that we've now got. I don't know what the Electoral Commission will do, but certainly if I was advising the Electoral Commission, I would say designate the Grassroots Out movement.
Yeah.
Grassroots Out would disagree. Many of us in this platform tonight would disagree about many, many issues. Some people might not even like some people. I don't know whether I'm in that category or not, but there's no doubt about it. When you're working in cross-party groups, you're working with organisations that you may not have every bit of what they say you agree with. And it is very, very important, but you know what unites us all? It doesn't matter whether we have personality differences, whether we have political differences, as I said, whether we don't like those people. What unites us is that we want to get our country back and we want to get out of the EU, and that is the number one. That's why over the next few weeks and months there will be big grassroots movements meeting across the United Kingdom, because in order to win, we have to reach out far, far away from this area of Westminster. We have to get out into the country. Now, you know, one of the things that any movement has, most movements throughout the world, have a symbol. They have something that becomes associated with their movement. And tonight I want to just suggest that maybe our grassroots movement could have a symbol. And I think a very, very good symbol of our grassroots movement would be this. A piece of white paper, saying nothing, showing that, frankly, our Prime Minister has more or less capitulated to the European Union. It may be that this will take off, and that whenever David Cameron appears anywhere in the country, people will hold up, dignified, very nicely. I was an MP when Tom was born, but I think that shows just the breadth of the age range as well that we've got within our movement. And you know, during those 27 years, I've taken every opportunity I could to vote against attempts by the EU to further integrate and remove our sovereignty. And a number of my colleagues, including my leader of my party and the Shadow Chancellor, Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, believed, like me, that our membership of the EU was incompatible with Labour values. We followed in the footsteps of the great Labour figures like Hugh Gaitskell, Barbara Castle, Peter Shore, and of course, Tony Benn. And that's why it is so incredibly disappointing that somehow, somewhere within the Labour machinery, Jeremy and John have been stifled. Now, maybe we will see that in the next week or two, next month or two, they may break out. Because I would give a message to my leader and to the leader of the Labour leadership tonight, is that around the country, you know, I'm often told, well, you're in a minority. There's only a few brave members of Parliament speaking out. And there are probably not that many of us, but they're growing every day. The silent ones are beginning to come out. And I would say to Jeremy and to our party's leadership that around the country there are millions of Labour voters and Labour supporters or ex-Labour supporters who have been left without a voice on the most important issue in our lifetime. And Jeremy talked about re-engaging with our voters, and his election undoubtedly brought excitement back into politics. But on the most significant issue of our lifetime, the Labour Party has been sadly left behind, not just within the Labour movement, I believe, but certainly with the mood of the country. And I think that is a terrible, terrible shame, and the Labour Party will live to regret it.
Yeah.
Expect the leadership of our party to challenge the terms of the membership of a club which has no democratic accountability, threatens our National Health Service with the dangerous transatlantic trade partnership, drives down exploitative wages with cheap, unskilled labour from Eastern Europe because of free movement, and has promoted zero-hour contracts. And I just cannot understand how anyone who is opposed to TTIP cannot see the logic of not being also opposed to the European Union. And I also believe that the decision by our Secretary of the Labour Party, Secretary General Ian McNicol, where he was actually formally, in writing, discouraging Labour branches to have this debate, was a mistake. Yeah. What does it say? They're obviously afraid of Labour Party members having a debate. Now that does tell you something about a political institution and a political party, and I do not believe that that represents the views of some of the members of our shadow cabinet. You know, I often think that The people who are most proud of our country are those that want to leave the European Union. They believe, as we've heard earlier, that we're good enough to trade with the world and decide our own destiny. It is those that want to remain, that do not believe in the United Kingdom and do not believe we are good enough to stand on our own. As a Labour MP, that voting to leave is the progressive and safe option in this referendum. It's a vote to leave a club whose influence in the world is declining each day. And as Ruth Lee has so well put, it is no longer that great economic area. We need to get out of it, and we need to look outwards. We need to look internationally, and we need to look to our Commonwealth links, who we so disgracefully. Let's not kid ourselves. The whole might, as has already been said by many people, the whole might of the British establishment will be turned onto us. The political parties at levels in the leadership, the bankers who are trying to bankroll the stay-in campaign, the CBI, they will all be trying to influence the debate, and they will be producing scare story after scare story. But we can and we will defeat them, because the referendum is not about them, it's not about us here on the platform, it's about all of us and those watching at home, because you yourself can do so much to make this referendum a success. Just think what an emancipation an exit would bring. It would allow the UK to sell freely to the whole of the world, including all of Europe, and it would also allow for the less developed countries to sell freely to us. The net effect of this would be to improve their standard of living, helping to remove the desire for their people to move to the UK and depleting their own human resources, which would be a win for everyone. As it stands now, condemns impoverished countries to a form of hopeless servitude that should have been marginalised and got rid of and consigned to history. How can anyone in the left condone that?
Yeah.
It is time for democratic governments across the EU, and I don't think we'll be alone if we leave. I think there are many other EU countries and movements within those countries who realise this is a failed project. They want to begin again to represent the real interests of the people, and we can lead that way. I love my country. I'm very proud of being British. I'm very proud. I believe in the United Kingdom, and I have confidence in our ability to once again be a self-governing nation. But you individually here can do so much. Every morning, each one of you should wake up and think, who can I persuade today? Who can I speak to? Who can I go and campaign in? Who can I talk to in the supermarket? In my supermarket, because I always chat to people and say, what do you think about the EU? And, you know, it is amazing. We heard the taxi driver earlier. It is amazing when people are asked what they think. And we know that we've got out there in the country millions and millions of people, many of whom who've never voted before. That's why we're going to win this referendum, because they are going to show that they care enough to actually come out and vote to get their country back. So the referendum gives us a chance. We mustn't let it pass. Let's make it happen, and let us rejoin the rest of the world.
The next speaker was Tom Purseglove. He's Conservative Member of Parliament for Corby in Northamptonshire. He's also the youngest Conservative Member of Parliament at the moment. Indeed, has been. He's been the youngest Member of Parliament for the Conservatives for quite a considerable number of years. And he was bringing a very youthful look to the issue of the European Union and Britain's relationship with it.
Well, thank you, Peter, for that very kind introduction. And I have to say, it is rather apt, isn't it, that the politician heads up an organisation called Together Against Win, but that is my great privilege. And a job that I enjoyed immensely prior to my election to the House of Commons. Thank you to all of you also for coming along tonight, for braving the cold, the wet and the miserable. We've been out there for much of today giving interviews on College Green. We've got very wet and cold in the process, and I know that a lot of you have braved that to be here with us tonight. When I was campaigning to win in Corby and East Northamptonshire, there were two things that came up time and time again on the doorstep. The first of those is, why do politicians spend all their time bickering? Why don't they put the national interest first? Why don't they get together? Why don't they work out a way forward on the issues rather than spending their whole time arguing? And the second thing, and I think this is going right to the heart of why we're all here tonight, is that desire for an EU referendum, a vote on whether we stay in or whether we come out. And what people used to say to me, and they still say to me when I go out and knock on doors at weekends, is that they voted for a free trade and a common market in the 1970s, not a political superstate. Now the good news is I think we're achieving on the first of those. Look at the panel that we've already got, and by the end of the night I think you're going to be really impressed about the breadth of political figures that we have represented. We're all putting aside our political differences, the petty squabbles that have gone on in the past, the disagreements that people have had, they don't matter. What matters is getting our great country out of the European Union.
Yeah.
And on the second of those points, let's look at the renegotiation scorecard in some detail. Oh, and by the way, if someone could just do me a huge favour, if there's white smoke coming out of the chimney while I'm speaking, please shout so that I can tailor my remarks accordingly. But we do know, for sure, at this point in time, that the renegotiation will not stop us sending £350 million a week to Brussels. Money that we could spend on our own public services, the police, the fire service, our hospitals, our schools. They need extra funding, and we could deliver that if we came out of the European Union. We could also make our own laws, laws that work in our national interest and not in the interests of other European countries. I'm proud to be a Member of Parliament. It is an enormous honour and a privilege to represent Corby and East Northamptonshire in the House of Commons. And I think that it should be my job, and along with my colleagues from across the House, to make the laws, not have them imposed upon us by the unelected, unaccountable European Commission. And you know what? I also want us to be able to control our own borders properly. But not only that, I want Britain to have a fair immigration system, one that doesn't discriminate people, one that works the same regardless of where you come from in the world. How can it be right that if you come from Australia, or you come from America, or you come from anywhere in the Commonwealth, it is more difficult for you to get into this country than if you came from within the EU? And I tell you what brought that home to me, and it was in my role as a constituency MP. Before Christmas, I visited a small company in Corby. It employed 6 or 7 people, really doing well, only just started up in the last 12 months, keen to export to markets outside of the European Union. And they'd taken on a young man who was from New Zealand, and he was doing really well. The company had invested in him, he was enjoying the job, he wanted to stay. They also wanted to export to that New Zealand and Australian market, which he'd have been in a prime position to help them do. But he had to go back. And as the local MP, I fought blooming hard to try and make sure that he could stay, because he was contributing, he was doing the right thing. He was going to help this small firm grow. How can it be right that people like that are being turned away when we have uncontrolled immigration from elsewhere? That's me. also want Britain to be able to trade globally. There's a whole world out there. Why should we be restricted to the European protection racket that we are at the moment? Come on, let's face it, the Germans are not going to stop selling Mercedes or BMWs or Audis to Britain if we pull out of the EU. There's a whole world out there. Let's get out there, let's trade with it. Let's sign our own trade agreements. Let's work with developing countries. That's much better than sticking plaster aid. That is the way forward, and we can do that outside of the European Union. And as the MP for Corby, I can also tell you that the analysis you heard earlier on in relation to the steel industry is absolutely right. I'm very proud to represent a steel town. We have 600 people employed in Corby still in our steelworks. Those people work incredibly hard, day in, day out, produce fantastic products that are sold around the world. And the European Commission are making it much harder. We are not getting to grips with Chinese dumping, and state aid rules are stopping us getting the help that our steel industry needs to them in a speedy and timely manner. The work that ministers in this country have been trying to do around helping with energy costs was held up for months and months and months by the European Commission. Unacceptable. So by any measure, on all the tests that my constituents set for the renegotiation, I think the vast majority of them would conclude that whatever the final deal is, it simply will not be enough and that the renegotiation will have failed. And you know what? It's also the case that it won't be worth the paper it's written on. I mean, would any of you in this room trust the European Union to deliver on promises?
No!
And the grassroots campaigning is going to be so important because the whole EU machinery, the minute that that piece of white paper is waved in the air, will be ploughing in to try and tell the great British people why it is that we are better off in the EU. And we need to take the case, door by door, vote by vote, and win this referendum for our great country. And Helen Harrison, who set out earlier on the work that we're going to do on the ground with a task force structure, Helen was a key part of my team in winning in Corby and East Northamptonshire. She got it so right in the description that she set out. We have to work together. We have to work cross-party. We have to work across the different leave groups. Petty wrangles, all of those things that have gone in the past do not matter. Let's come together at these task force meetings, work together, get out there and win it, door by door, vote by vote.
Hear, hear.
So let the message go out loud and clear from this hall here in the heart of Westminster tonight, from all those who wish to leave, that we must work together. And together we will get our great country out of the European Union.
Given the size of the event, we're running this in 2 parts. This concludes part 1. Tune in next week for part 2.
And that about wrapped it up for the Grassroots Out Rally being held in Westminster on the 19th of February. Just a reminder that this is Rupert Matthews, the campaign manager at Better Off Out. If you want to learn more about our campaign, visit our website www.betteroffOut.net. We've got a wide range of campaigning materials to help take Britain out of the European Union. Contact us through the website. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter. We've got our own YouTube channel and so on. So cheerio, campaign goes onwards and upwards.